Assalamualaikum to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night whenever you're in this earth. Today we're gonna learn today we're gonna learn one of the sports called football. Let's get started.
Listen up, men and women and robots. I'm not going to talk to you about winning and losing. I'm not going to talk to you about math or science either, but I will tell you this. The hopes and dreams of thousands of Brain Pop fans are riding on your shoulders. You need to win, but more importantly, you need to want to win. You need to want to know how to... You need to know how to play football? Like all the rules and regulations? And you need me to tell you in less than 3 minutes? But I stayed up all night writing that cool speech. Oh, fine. American football is played on a rectangular field called a gridiron. It's exactly 100 yards long and 160 feet wide. Sorry, there's no metric system in football. The ball looks like this. The equipment looks like this. And the game is divided into 4 15-minute quarters. Of course, a game takes a lot longer than an hour since the clock stops during timeouts, penalties, injuries, incomplete passes, halftime, measurements, wardrobe Okay. Each team puts 11 of its players on the field at once. One team starts out playing offense, and one team starts out playing defense. The goal of the offense is to move the ball down the field all the way into the opponent's end zone. The offense is led by a player called the quarterback, and there are a couple ways he can move the ball. He can pass it through the air and have a receiver run downfield to catch it. Or he can hand it off to a running back who will try to break away and run with it toward the end zone. It's up to the defense to stop them. Defensive players try to tackle whoever's carrying the ball and break up pass plans before the receiver can make a catch. Of course, the offense can only run a single play at one time. In football, these individual plays are called downs. A down usually ends when the player with the ball is tackled or forced out of bounds. The ball is placed at the spot where the last play stopped, and the next down begins. Each offense is given 4 downs to move the ball 10 yards. If they can make it, they get another 4 downs to move another 10 yards. If they can't make it, the other team's offense takes over. I'm getting there. If a team moves the ball all the way downfield into the opponent's end zone, they score a touchdown. That's worth 6 points. When a team scores a touchdown, they're allowed to try for an extra point by kicking the ball between the goalposts. Sometimes, a team gets close to the opponent's end zone, but can't make it all the way in. Instead of just giving the ball to the other team, they can kick a field goal, and that's worth 3 points. After a team scores, it kicks the ball off to the other team and puts its defense on the field. Now it's the other team's chance to try and score. Well, you can try for a field goal from anywhere on the field.
But it's a risky move if you're too far from the end zone, because if you miss, your opponent gets the ball. If one team's offense is having trouble moving the ball, it's safer for them to use their 4th down to punt the ball down the field.
That way, when the other team's offense takes over, they'll have a long way to go before they can score. Before you go out there are about 1 trillion other things you need to know. Like, let's say an offensive player drops the ball as he's running with it. If a defensive player picks it up, his team gets to keep it and go on offense. That's called a fumble. If a defensive player catches a pass thrown by the quarterback, they get to keep it then, too. That's called an interception.
So when you're out there today, try not to do either of those things.
Don't forget those guys in the stripy shirts. They're called the officials, and they enforce all the rules and regulations. Now let's go out there and get him.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
Oh. Whoops.
Thanks to you, because I was dead first.
The next sport is learning is soccer. Let's get started. The rule of soccer. Let's get started.
A yellow card? You've got to be kidding me. I didn't trip him. He just fell down on his own. Turn it over. Dear Tim and Moby, I need to know more about soccer. Can you tell me? Sincerely, Ronnie. Soccer is the most popular sport in the world. In most places outside the U.S., though, it's known as football. Amateurs everywhere play for the love of the game, and there are professional soccer leagues around the world. Millions of fans attend matches every year, and millions more watch on TV. Soccer's had mild success as a spectator sport in the United States, but millions of girls and boys play in youth leagues and on school teams. Well, soccer-like games have been played for centuries, but the modern rules were codified in 19th century England. Today, matches are played between teams of 11 players each, with a ball that looks like this. The field, or pitch, is about 100 meters long, with a big goal at either end. The point of the game is to put the ball into the other team's goal. A match lasts 90 minutes, and whichever team has the most goals at the end wins. If the teams have the same number of goals, then the match usually ends in a tie. Sorry, buddy, but that's against the rules. Only one player on each team can touch the ball with his hands. That's the goalkeeper, who stands by the goal waiting to catch or deflect the ball when the other team takes a shot. The other players mainly use their feet to dribble the ball downfield, pass it to one another, and take shots on goal. They can also move the ball with their heads and torsos, but there's a reason the game is called football. Actually, it's a lot different than American football. First of all, soccer is a non-contact sport. You can't push, hold, charge into, or trip your opponents. If you do, you'll be called for a foul, and the other team might get a free kick on your goal. If you commit a really bad foul, the referee might give you a yellow card, which is like a warning, or a red card, which means you have to leave the game. Yeah, you already gave me one of those, thanks. Another major difference between soccer and American football is that play rarely stops. If the ball goes out of bounds, it's thrown or kicked back in almost immediately. As a result, the action is fluid, continuous, and dynamic. There's not a lot of starting and stopping, and very few substitutions. Games are really low scoring, too. There are often only 2 or 3 goals scored in an entire professional match. Well, aside from the goalie, there are 3 basic positions on a soccer team. Defenders usually stay on their own half of the field. Their job is to prevent the other team from breaking through and taking shots on goal. Forwards are the most aggressive players on the team. They play close to their opponent's goal and try to score at every opportunity. In between the defenders and the forwards are the midfielders. They play a combination of offense and defense. When the other team is moving the ball, they try to take it away. And when their team has possession, they set up scoring plays by moving the ball downfield and passing it to the forwards. Players can switch between these 3 positions depending on the formation their coach chooses.
Right, I was just getting to that. The biggest event in soccer is the World Cup, which is held every 4 years. The best players in the world, both male and female, represent their home countries on special national teams. Teams from hundreds of countries play against one another to qualify. Eventually, the fields are narrowed down to 32 teams, which travel to a designated host country and compete in a month-long tournament. It's sort of like the Olympics, in that it stirs feelings of patriotism and intense national pride. World Cup final matches between the last two teams standing are among the most watched sporting events on the planet. Anyway, those are the basics of soccer. Can we restart the game now? I guess I still have to work on my heading skills.
The next thing
Os homens em calças curtas e camisas coloridas chutando uma esfera preta e branca aqui nesse gramado. E agora tem outro grupo de homens que aparecem muito interessados em impedir o progresso do primeiro grupo. Os homens em calças curtas e camisas coloridas chutando uma esfera preta e branca aqui nesse gramado. E agora tem outro grupo de homens que aparecem muito interessados em impedir o progresso do primeiro grupo.
It's not that kind of football. Dear Nat and Moby, why should I give a hoot about the World Cup? Go Pats. From Ye Bomb? Psh. The World Cup is the biggest sporting event on Earth, bigger than the Olympics. It's got all the drama of the World Series and all the hype of March Madness. International rivalries, dramatic comebacks, and thrilling overtime showdowns. Every 4 years, a different country hosts the tournament. More than 3 million people attended the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, and over 3 billion watched it on TV. They're called matches, not games, and it's not just a soccer match. I mean, is the Super Bowl just a game? Like in the Olympics, national teams come together to celebrate greatness in the sport and compete for the title of world champion. And it's not just the players who travel from all over the world. Fans converge on host nations to watch the matches in person. For 1 month, they get to experience the sights, sounds, and taste of a place they may never get another chance to visit, and bond with millions of strangers over their shared love of the game. It's a worldwide cultural exchange as fans from every nation come together to cheer on victories and cry over defeats. Crying in public is basically required at the World Cup, and not just for players. For die-hard fans, it's not just wins and losses, it's life and death. Clearly you can relate to that. Anyway, the lead-up to the World Cup starts way before the first match. FIFA, the International Soccer League, includes more than 200 member nations. Out of those, only 32 get to play in the men's tournament. For women, it's 24. In hundreds of qualifying matches over nearly 3 years, countries compete for one of these spots. Once the teams are set, they're divided into groups of 4 for the group stage. It's a round-robin tournament. Every team plays every other team in the group. Teams get points for each win or tie, which is also called a draw. The 2 teams with the most points from each group move on to the knockout stage. These teams play each other in a sudden death tournament. It's just an expression, but I told you, people take this game seriously. It means if you lose, you're out. And in the knockout stage, there are no ties allowed. Tied games go into overtime, And then the ultimate tiebreakers, the penalty shootout. Each team gets 5 undefended shots on the goal. If they're still tied after 5, they alternate, 1 shot per team. Whoever scores the first unanswered goal wins the whole match. Winners of the knockout stage advance until they get to the ultimate showdown, the World Cup final. For those who lose out on a trophy, it can be hard to face their fans. Each team is there to represent its country, so the stakes can be huge. A 1986 knockout match between Argentina and England was particularly tense. The two countries had been fighting a war just 4 years earlier. Argentina surrendered in about 2 months, and feelings were still raw years later. They saw the match as their chance at revenge. Yep, they got it, but the goal that put Argentina ahead was controversial. Lots of people thought it was a handball. So that didn't exactly ease tensions between fans. But even after the bitterest matches, opponents are expected to shake hands and even swap jerseys. It's a reminder that the fighting ends with the final whistle. And an example of good sportsmanship for all the fans. The World Cup offers a peaceful way for fans to express their patriotism or love of country. 'Cause tempers can definitely flare over wins and losses. Unfortunately, the U.S. team didn't even qualify for 2018. We had one bad game. It could have happened to anyone. So, maybe I'm supporting the women's team. The Americans have dominated since the first Women's World Cup in 1991. We've won more world championship titles than any other nation. And we're gonna crush it in 2019. The French won't know what hit them. Whoa! No offense, Voltaire. Here, no hard feelings? Voltaire, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yes, I am.
Oh man, it was awesome. So like the bad guy is trying to start World War III, and he's in this submarine, and he's got this helmet on, so Professor X can't read his mind. But then Magneto leans out of the plane and uses his awesome magnet power to like pull the whole submarine right out of the... Hey, are you even listening to me? Just because all your friends jump off a bridge doesn't mean you... Fine, but don't say I didn't... Warn you. Dear Tim and Moby, my friends are constantly sharing gossip and posting mean rumors. I'm scared they'll drop me if I don't join in. What do I do? From Riley. Hey there, Riley. That sounds like a tough situation. It can be really difficult to resist peer pressure. Well, peers are people in your age group, like classmates, or the kids in your neighborhood. As you get older, you spend less time with your family and more time with your peers. It's only natural to want to fit in. So you might start to dress the same, talk the same, or even act the same. When the decisions you make are influenced by those around you, that's peer pressure. Actually, it's not always a bad thing. Humans are social animals. We get cues on how to behave from those around us. So in many situations, peer pressure can actually be good. If you play a sport, teammates can encourage you to practice more and cooperate. Certain classmates might motivate you to get good grades to keep up with them. Close friends support you when you're down and can help you stay positive. But in other circumstances, peer pressure can be, not so good. It's tempting to always want to keep up with your friends, even when they might do things that are destructive or dangerous, like drinking, smoking, taking drugs, shoplifting, or being mean to other kids. You might not feel happy or comfortable joining in, but saying no isn't always easy. We all want to get along with our friends and not be left out. Like if you're at a party where there's alcohol, people might make fun of you or single you out if you don't have a drink. Or you could look around and realize that everybody else is drinking. You might grab one just to avoid feeling weird or different. Yeah, that's kind of like what Riley's dealing with. Even when no one is telling you what to do, you can still feel forced to fit in. That kind of pressure can seem innocent, which makes it harder to resist. Hard, but not impossible. No matter how much pressure you're feeling, the final decision is always yours. Learn to trust your own sense of right and wrong. That's the surest way to feel good about your choices. One choice you'll be happy you made is to pick your friends wisely. Hang out with kids who share your values and respect your interests. Those kinds of friends won't judge you or get hung up on superficial stuff like how you dress. Right, they also won't make you feel bad for doing what you like or for saying no to things you think are wrong. But if you expect to face a high-pressure situation, it helps to be prepared. You can practice different ways of turning people down, or come up with clever excuses to avoid situations entirely. The buddy system works too. Find a friend who shares your concerns and stick together for support. If all else fails, find an adult to back you up. They'll understand. They deal with peer pressure too. Nope, I never give in to peer pressure. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I... Oh, hey Rita. You guys are going to the Renaissance Fair? Cool, can I have to dress like a jester, but I want to be a knight. I've even been practicing my jousting moves. Look, you don't understand, okay? Being a teenager is hard. Dear Tim and Moby, what happened during westward expansion? From Remy. Well, Remy, during the first half of the 19th century, the United States grew at an amazing rate. In 1803, the government bought a huge amount of territory from France. It added Texas in 1845, and a year later signed a treaty with the British for control of the Pacific Northwest. The puzzle was almost complete by 1848, when the U.S. took control of the Southwest after the Mexican-American War. The population was booming too. There were just 5 million Americans in 1800, but by 1850 there were 23 million. Well, lots of people thought that the United States had a special mission to spread democracy and civilization across the continent. This idea was called Manifest Destiny, and it's reflected in some of the art from the period. Take a look. The goddess is supposed to represent American progress. She's bringing telegraph lines, railroads, and white settlers into the West, and shooing American Indians and buffalo out of the way. No, I'm afraid it wasn't necessarily nice. And it didn't happen overnight, either. At first, most of the land was wilderness. That's why the original settlers were mostly trappers and mountain men. If you were tough enough to survive, you could make a good living trapping animals and selling their fur. These guys helped set up some of the first western forts and trading posts. American Indians taught them safe routes across the deserts and over the mountains, and soon trails were mapped across the continent. Nope, the new areas didn't become states right away. At first, they were incorporated into territories. The territories had their own governments, but were basically controlled by the U.S. Congress. But as soon as enough settlers moved in, they could become states. To encourage this, many territorial governments offered an amazing deal. If you moved onto a small plot of land and farmed it yourself, you'd be given that land for free. This was called homesteading, and lots of settlers took advantage of it. But farmers weren't the only ones heading out west. The California Gold Rush of 1849 lured fortune seekers from across the world, and members of the Mormon Church flocked to the Utah Territory to escape persecution and violence. Well, the pioneers followed many different routes, but the most famous was the Oregon Trail. From the early 1840s onward, hundreds of thousands of people traveled these trails. The journey covered more than 3,000 kilometers and lasted around 5 months. To keep safe, pioneers traveled in wagon trains with dozens of families. Their covered wagons could carry 1,000 kilograms of food and supplies, but there was rarely any room for the pioneers themselves. Instead, whole families walked alongside their slow-moving oxen. Forts along the trail provided help and supplies, but it was still a dangerous trek. Accidents, bad weather, and diseases like cholera killed about 1 in 20 travelers. Actually, very few pioneers were harmed by American Indians. In fact, it was the pioneers' arrival in the West that posed a serious threat to the Indians' way of life. For decades, the government had moved Indians off their native lands so that white settlers could live there. Some, like the Lakota Sioux chief Sitting Bull, tried to resist, but their efforts were always squashed by the U.S. Army, which was bigger and stronger than any Indian fighting force. In the end, the Indians were forced to move to special areas called reservations. No, it wasn't fair at all, and it's definitely not a proud moment in our history. Well, things got a lot easier for the pioneers when the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869. All of a sudden, anyone could reach the West Coast in just a few days by taking the train. In 1890, most of the land had been settled, most territories had become states, and the days of the frontier were gone. Right, I guess they do live on in 8-bit computer games. So, you want to try going to Oregon again? Cool.
Today, we're getting our computer notes. Huh? No. The next thing we're gonna find is blackjack. This is called a personal blackjack. Let's get started. The next thing we're gonna know is Jane. Let's get started. I'll be right back, Simon.
At first, she could only watch from a distance using binoculars. But as the chimps got used to her, she was able to come closer and closer. Udall ended up observing the same group of chimps for 55 years.
Huh? The next concept or segment is going to some more information. If you forgot, if you process history, if you did everything, you study. Let's get started. By the way, this is part 26.
Look where down. Shake your booty little. Hey, how was the food, guys? Y'all thought I could.
Cooking yourself, Mr. Pathetic. never mind. This thing gonna be. We're gonna play something.
Which Sebastian should I use their target? Yes.